Good morning, afternoon. This is intended for the returning sophomore class. This is your summer exercise in Perio 5001, intended for you to complete your summer clinical exercise on one another. This is not a complete periodontal evaluation examination charting. However, we're going to focus on four things today. We're going to chart periodontal pockets. We're going to record bleeding on probing at these pockets. And then we will also record a gingival index and a plaque index. So here I am in my EHR. From my EHR, I'm going to the Perio chart. I will left click. This brings up our periodontal chart. There is nothing existing in this periodontal chart, and to confirm that, I'll go into a history of my periodontal charting, and it shows me that there is no previous periodontal charting. Now, I cannot add into this chart from here. I'm going to create a record. I'm going to give this new record a name. This is our initial examination. And so that I don't lose this, I'm saving it. Now I have an initial exam saved without any information recorded in it. And today we're going to focus on recording pocket depths or probing depths, this line. So in fact, I'll come here, and for every tooth from the facial and from the lingual, we will record 3 measurements. This will be distofacial, midfacial, and mesiofacial. This is set up to proceed automatically. We'll run through this and it will progress you from the upper right quadrant all the way through the upper left quadrant on the facial. Then it will default back to start on the upper right quadrant lingual and proceed to and through the upper left quadrant lingual. So let's begin our recording for probing depths or pocket depths here. We've got our probe position. You've got your finger rest and you're starting your probing on the distofacial of tooth number 2. You've recorded a 3 millimeter probe depth, midfacial a 2, mesiofacial a 3. You see how this will in fact progress itself automatically, so it makes recording just a joy. 3, 2, 3. We're recording all the way across. For time's sake, I'm going to progress to the next quadrant. Assume that we've continued our probing depths here. This will default in the next quadrant, recording a 2, 2, 2. And now it's defaulted or automatically gone to the facial of my next tooth. When we get to a spot that has no teeth, it will not allow me to record. Oh, hachabuchi, hope your ears weren't listening to that. Where I've got a missing tooth, it will not allow me to record any measurements for it. Just as it defaulted from the upper right to the upper left quadrant, it will default back to the palatal aspect here. Now this is defaulted back, so I can continue my charting from the palatal aspect, upper left quadrant. We'll assume and do the same thing again, automatic, and boom, we've created the beginning of our periodontal chart for probing depths or pocket depth measurements for all of our teeth. Now we're going to record bleeding on probing. This is a little different than recording probing depths. Bleeding on probing is more of a manual exercise. For bleeding on probing, all I'm requiring you to do is record where you record bleeding. If you have no bleeding on probing, it doesn't matter that we indicate N for no. On the distofacial of tooth number 2, I've got bleeding. I'm going to go bingo. I got bleeding there, okay? If I had no bleeding on the midfacial, no reason for me to go to it. If I've got bleeding on the mesiofacial, I'm going to click to the mesiofacial box and record bleeding there. So I've recorded these 2 sites as bleeding on this particular tooth. We're going to have bleeding or no bleeding for all measurements we recorded up here. We need to, at this point, manually advance. The program will not default or advance for you, and we're going to need to reset wherever we want to record bleeding. If I have no bleeding on the midfacial here on my exam, there's no reason to even click on the midfacial. I'm going to go to the mesiofacial, record bleeding there. We're at midfacial. Say I had no bleeding on the distofacial, midfacial, but I did have some on the mesiofacial. Boom, here I go. So we've done Probing depth, we've done bleeding on probing. Now we're going to record a gingival index and a plaque index. Go to a gingival index here. Remember what we're looking for in a gingival index. We're going to use our clinical parameters, color, contour, consistency. We'll start from the facial, and the reason we're doing that is on the facial here, we're going to record 3 measurements. We're going to record interproximal measurements or proximal measurements on every tooth as well as a mid-facial. From the lingual aspect, we will only be recording mid-lingual. For gingival index and for plaque index, what we're recording, unlike bleeding on probing and probing depth, where we record 6 sites per tooth, we're only recording 4 sites per tooth for these 2 indices. And we will, for these 2 indices from the facial, record 3 sites here. The instructors come by and he said, hey, you know, I think you misread this. We've got really rolled borders here. We're very edematous. This tissue margin is friable here clinically. I'm saying it's inflamed. Folks, what we want to know is whether we have inflammation present or no inflammation. If we have present inflammation, I want you to chart it just as inflammation, disregarding mild, moderate, or severe. We've got inflammation on the distal. You and your instructor looked at it again. We've got inflammation in mid-facial, and we've got inflammation on the mesiofacial. Now, like pocket depth, this program will automatically advance itself for you. So you see it's defaulted up to the next sites for you to record. I'm looking here and I'm saying, yeah, interproximal, I do have inflammation, but you know what? Mid-facial, this patient is brushing very well, took care of it. I don't have anything going there, so I'm just going to go to the mesiofacial, and boy, we're inflamed there. So this, when I look at the chart, tells me that I've got 1 site that showed me no clinical inflammation. Again, we can record inflammation at all sites. It will allow me to record inflammation in tissue. Remember, now we're reading the tissues. So it will allow me, although I'm missing a tooth, to record inflammation here. This could be like a papillary hyperplasia. It could be some gingival overgrowth on a patient that's on a calcium channel blocker. There's some edematous tissue underneath an existing removable partial denture. We're going to go to the lingual. Now, I told you from the facial, I record 3 sites per tooth. Gingival index from the lingual. It's only going to allow me to record a mid-lingual site. Let's attempt to do this on a distolingual box here. Boom. Okay, that'll blow your ears out, won't it? Let's go to mid-lingual and see if it'll work there. Bingo. Yeah. Now, again, it's automatic. It's advanced itself here. It will only allow me to record where I'm supposed to record. Boom. Mid-lingual, mid-lingual, mid-lingual. Again. So GI and PI, GI will also record edentulous sites because, in fact, we're reading tissue. It could be inflamed. Let's go now and talk about plaque index. We've done our gingival index. We've done our pocket probing depths. We've recorded our bleeding on probing, done our gingival index. We're going to give the patient a disclosing tablet, and we're going to record plaque here. We're going to start, if you will, from the facial. At tooth number 1, we're going to record plaque. Can I record plaque on an edentulous area? Boom, no. So unlike a gingival index, which will allow me to read tissue at an edentulous area, recording plaque is only involved with teeth that are present and or implants that are present. Here I am from the facial. I can record 3 sites. Circumferential plaque, boom, plaque there, but guess what? They brushed okay, so I have no plaque recorded there, but you know, the patient here didn't floss, so I've got plaque here at the interproximal again. You'll see this a lot. You know, the patient's brushing okay, it's a smile line. I'm recording interproximal plaque because they haven't been using floss. Just like your gingival index from the palate, I cannot record interproximal sites. It will only allow me to record mid-palatal, and it will default itself to mid-palatal across the entire record. So let's review for a moment what we've attempted to accomplish today. We did periodontal pocket depths or probing depths. We recorded 3 sites per tooth. This line automatically advances itself. The program has a default to advance you to the next quadrant, to include all the facials. As we go from the upper right quadrant, the program will advance itself automatically to the upper left quadrant. When we've finished all the facials on the upper right and upper left, it will default back to the palatal aspect, and you will start your probing depths from the palatal aspect on the maxillary arch. So we've charted pocket depths or probing depths, maxillary arch. We'll go back, we'll record bleeding on probing. This is a little bit more labor intensive now because we've got to manually advance ourselves through, right? We record a bleeding here. We'll have to manually advance ourselves. For our purposes, nothing recorded means it was a healthy site, and that will allow you to be more efficient in your recording bleed. Plaque and gingival index, remember, we record from the facial 3 sites for gingival index per tooth, 3 sites for plaque index from the facial aspect. However, as we go to the lingual, it will only allow us for plaque or gingival index to record a midlingual site. You'll see we're only able to go to the midlingual aspect. Gingival index, plaque index, 4 sites per tooth, 3 on the facial, 1 on the palate. Probing depth, 6 sites for tooth. Bleeding on probing corresponds to the 6 sites on every tooth that could potentially bleed upon probing. Okay, I'm an idiot. I hope she deletes this out too. Okay, so we've done our complete exam. We've given it a name when we started. We called that our initial exam. Now, I want to save it to this point, so I'm going to click Save. My instructor has not come by, so I cannot complete the exam without him here to complete this for me. I've exited from here. I've exited from here. I'm back in my EHR. I'm not so sure I saved it. You know, I don't see any charting, any probing depths up here. Gosh, you know what? That won't... I did, in fact, save it. I can go in. You see, this is an initial exam, but the status is incomplete. So now let's go back into it. Let's edit review this. You see, I'm back into my screen where I can edit review it. Status is incomplete. My instructor comes over. He checks everything with me. We go through it tooth by tooth. So the instructor goes through it and says, okay, everything is good. What we're going to do is now we're going to complete this exam. You will click on complete. This comes up. Instructor will take his card, slide his card. Boom. Now we've gone and completed this. This record is saved. It's your perfect record. Let's exit out of here and prove it to you. Now, bingo. Look in my EHR. Because it's a completed exam, this will bring up my probing depths, facial and lingual, and it will reflect on what date this examination was done. This tells me that I've at least done periodontal pocket depths or probing depths on this patient. It's a complete exam. Let me go back in and show you. Let's go up here and boom, the status on this is complete. That means, folks, we can get back into it. We can select it and go back into it, but at this point we can make no changes to this record. You will have an exercise to create. You will have a test patient assigned to you. You will gain access to that test patient's record. You will be given some specific instructions written down on how to record and what to record for this patient. You will have an exercise in actually doing everything we've just completed. It's an exercise that should take you maybe 15, 20 minutes to complete the first time, and certainly much less than that later.